Chapter 13. When I lived at the precinct, the guy who taught me most about being a detective was Detective Ricardo. Rick was getting pretty old and getting ready to retire. He was spending his final 6 months at the precinct doing something at a desk. I never figured out just exactly what he did, but he did it on the night watch, midnight to 8. The job wasn't thrilling and the night was pretty long, so he talked to me a lot. He liked to complain about the hot dog detectives. You know what a hot dog detective is, Sammy? I'll explain it like this. On the one hand, you got your hot dogs. On the other hand, you got your cool cats. You follow what I'm saying? Your dogs are impatient. Your cats are laid back. Your dogs are fighters. Your cats are observers. He paused for a second and looked me in the eye. For example, put a dog and a cat in a kitchen. Flat second later, ask the dog what it saw, and the dog will say, food. Ask the cat what it saw, and half an hour later, the cat is still talking. Remember that, he said. And remember that everything you see can be a clue. I thought about Rick as I landed very softly on the Cohen's kitchen floor and then looked around the room. The kitchen had blue flowered paper on the walls that was dotted with a number of child-sized fingerprints, some made in peanut butter, some made in jam. A couple of drawings were taped to the refrigerator. One was a 7-headed dragon signed Billy. The other was a whale, or a pickle, signed Bo. Bo and Billy were 6-year-old twins. I looked at the clock. It was 4:35. Spike had said Billy and Bo went to day camp and stayed till 5 o'clock when Mrs. Cohen picked them up. Good. I had plenty of time to look around. I looked at the kitchen. There were dishes in the sink with the general leavings of 4 people's breakfasts. Corn muffin crumbs made a trail across the floor. I tested them for staleness. They were older than breakfast by at least 7 hours. A midnight muffin, I decided. Very nice. I followed the corn muffin trail through the dining room. No new furniture, peach-colored walls. And continued to track it through a peach-colored hall. I tracked it to the living room and up to the sofa where it ended abruptly in a large pile of books. Mr. Cohen, I remembered, was a history professor. His wife was a potter. She made a lot of pots. There were pots on the windowsills and pots on the floor. There were flowers in some of them, and plants, and a lot of different herbs in the others. The rug was Indian. The furniture was tan. A guitar sat upright in a cozy-looking chair. The rug seemed to double as a car racing track. About a dozen model cars stood frozen mid-race. I was looking around me at the fresh, very clean-looking, peach-colored walls, when Spike hollered, "Sam?" I turned, and then stared. Spike, who's ordinarily black, was all white. What happened? He looked at me darkly. 3 guesses. I grinned. You had a terrible shock and turned gray. He shook his head rapidly, and fine silky powder seemed to fly around his face. Uh-huh, I said, watching it descend. Mrs. Kelly, he nodded, was baking? She was baking, he agreed, and I walked through the kitchen, and she didn't even see me. I checked the apartment. And? Read my lips. I squinted momentarily and tried to find his lips. No new furniture? I read. Right, he said. None. Also, I remembered to keep an open mind. And? An open mind is very dangerous, he said. I mean, things can come into it, but things can fall out. As it happens, the thing that fell out of my mind was, that Mrs. Kelly was baking, he said. She saw me and screamed and then threw a cup of flour. I laughed. You've got a cruel sense of humor, Spike said. Listen, kid, I told him. Detective work is dirty. Again, I looked around me at the fresh, very clean-looking, peach-colored walls. You check the furniture, and I'll check the rest. The walls were a blank. No pictures, no hooks. A couple of paintings were stacked against a chair. Maybe, just maybe, I decided, they were new. I examined the paintings. The subjects of all of them were pots filled with flowers, and every single one of them was signed Irma Cohen, 1991. This sofa, Spike peered out from underneath the couch, is 11 years old, and the dust underneath it is about the same age. He shrugged. I'm just kidding, but I'd say it's 7 weeks. He coughed. Maybe 8. I checked the terrace door while Spike went courageously off to check the bedrooms. Actually, I liked the apartment very much. The living room was lived in. Happily, comfortably, cheerfully, I thought. A family lived here, and I wondered if they ever thought of bringing in a cat. I looked at the doorframe, the glass, and the lock. Once again, it was obvious the door wasn't jimmied. But right there next to it, right beside the door, was a peach-colored picture hook, nailed against the wall. And dangling from the hook by a ribbon was a key. A skeleton key. A skeleton key is a long, skinny key. An ordinary key has a lot of little teeth. A skeleton key has 1, maybe 2. Meaning, for openers, it's easy to copy. Logically, it had to be the key to the terrace. But rule number 1 remained, never assume. I squinted at the key. The jump, maybe 3.5 feet, was no sweat, but getting the ribbon off the hook was something else. I hurled myself up and tried to grab it with my teeth and went skittering to the floor. It took 11 more tries, and then finally I did it. Spike, coming in at the 11th, said, "Wow!" Never mind about wow. I was looking at the key. I examined it closely and saw that it was flecked with bright yellow dots. I touched them. They were sticky. I tasted them. Wax. Spike tried it over. Wax? He said. Wax. Like in candle wax, Spike? I grinned. So we know how Mr. Quark got the key. Perhaps. Spike looked at me. Some of us know. But then some of us know. I explained about wax. That you can buy it in sheets about the size of a postcard. You'd warm it, get it soft, and you'd press the key into it, and presto, the shape of the key is in the wax. And then what? You'd take it to a locksmith, I said. You'd say, copy this shape. Spike started laughing. Then he got excited and raced around the room, getting flour over everything. And, he said, racing from the sofa to the chair, and, he said, jumping from the window to the wall, once you had the key to the Cohen's terrace door, you'd also have the key to the Kellys and the Crandalls. What? I said. He suddenly halted in his tracks, looking sober, intelligent, and once again black. Sorry, he said, but if I'd shaken that flour off in Donna's place, she'd kill me. Here, he looked down. It sort of mingles with the dust. The key, I said impatiently. All the terrace doors have the same lock and key. Trust me, he said. Donna lost her key once and borrowed Mrs. Brown's. I was thinking that over when I heard a little click. From where we were standing, we could see the front door, and we could hear well beyond it. A key started jingling. A voice said, Billy Bo, go wash your hands. Bo Billy, Wash your face. Clack! The door opened, and we were headed for the dumbwaiter faster than a shot. When I got to the bookstore, the office was deserted. The desk held another cup of coffee and some cake, and the radio was playing my favorite Brandenburg Concerto by Bach. My corduroy pillow looked soft and inviting. I climbed the bookshelf and thought about Rick. Remember, he told me, remember that everything you see can be a clue. I was trying to remember everything I'd seen as I yawned uncontrollably and settled into bed. Dust balls and flower pots, dishes and crumbs. When the details are boring, the mind quickly numbs.